Welcome to Salt Pig, where two cookbook writers chat about the ups and downs of actual home kitchen life. What are we talking about this week, Ellie?
We're talking about how recipes fit into home cooking life. You know, we're two professionals in this world working on cookbooks, but we're grappling with all the things that like a recipe is supposed to represent, all the weight it carries in publishing, testing, how a recipe's written, what it's doing for the home cook or not.
Yeah. Or not doing, what it captures about home cooking or doesn't capture about home cooking.
Yeah, it's not a perfect piece of writing, despite our best intentions.
You can find new and old episodes wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to check us out on Substack too at saltpig.substack.com. And for this episode in particular, I would be really interested to hear what people think. I know that a lot of listeners are avid home cooks, or they're really interested in home cooking. And I guess I just want to know, like, what do you want from a recipe? What do recipes usually fail to capture? What could they be better at? Like, what's really useful in a recipe, or what's like really annoying in a recipe?
Likewise. And for all our listeners who are not avid home cooks, who maybe feel less comfortable, I'm also interested why they might be inclined to buy a cookbook and what works for them, because I think a lot of cookbooks are tuned for people who don't know how to cook, and I wonder if it's actually working for them.
Yeah.
So tell us.
Yes, please.
saltpigpodcast@gmail.com is our email address. You can do it there, or you can do it in a more public fashion, which is always fun because people chime in on our Substack.
So if you go to saltpig.substack.com, you can leave a comment. And then if you go there, you can subscribe to the newsletter where you will get notified of all our new episodes. And you'll also receive our monthly newsletter. And we have one coming out this Friday. It's called The Chomp.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it.
All right, let's get started. Okay, so before we get into today's conversation, I wanted to do a quick little Salt Pig throwback to our convenience food episode a few weeks ago. Last time I went shopping at Trader Joe's, I saw that they had a frozen kimbap. And you had mentioned that this is one of your little Costco treats. And so I picked it up. And I was so impressed. It was so good. And also so good. 3 minutes in the microwave. And it was this really substantial, flavorful. I mean, it definitely feels like a treat. But it also felt like I was like, this is a wholesome meal too.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. It's like pickled vegetables and tofu and the rice and the
so
nori.
Wholesome and feels like, I mean, it's like obviously going out for like a sushi lunch is much nicer, but like I was like for 3 minutes and like I don't know how much they cost at Trader Joe's, like $3. I'm like, this is a treat I can get behind. It's like cheaper than a coffee.
Yeah, exactly. And that also, so the other thing I saw finally, because I had actually been looking for these, were the scallion pancakes, like those that Samin Nosrat had done, just mentioned them somewhere. They are very, very good. I highly recommend stocking up on those.
Okay, I'm going to go try to find them.
Well, and it made me realize too, like this, I feel like something I wasn't fully articulating or even thinking that much about when we talked about convenience food is like, these things are like really delightful treats. And there's something about like pulling this scallion pancake out of the freezer, not even having to thaw it. You throw it frozen into the hot skillet. Oh. It crisps up so beautifully. Yeah. But then I took it and I made a breakfast where first I cooked the scallion pancake, and then in the same 10-inch cast iron skillet.
That seems important.
Yes.
For crisping.
Yeah. I don't think you'd want to use a nonstick pan. I don't even think you need to. I think there's probably like fat in there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I made a little like thin frittata. I think like one of the ways in which like my OCD materializes is like, okay, this is a thin pancake. I don't want like toppings that are uneven or like sloppy or dripping off. It's going to be a thin egg dish that lays perfectly on top of it. Right. So I ended up making like
size.
Yes, exactly. So that's exactly where I was going with this. Then I scraped the frittata out of the pan, put the scallion pancake back in there, scattered some shredded cheese on top, then the frittata, and then I like sort of folded it over like a quesadilla, and it was a really big hit. It was a big hit.
I bet.
It was really good.
Oh my gosh. Did you serve it with like any sort of dipping sauces? Was there like hot sauce or...
Well, I mean,
Or
not
just
to
straight
touch
up?
on every single thing that we've talked about on this podcast so far, but when we went to Arthur Avenue, we
Oh,
got
yeah.
one of these like giant industrial sized jars of Calabrian chilies.
Really?
$20. It's like a giant.
Oh my God. I'm going
it's
there immediately.
It was a
to
great
get it.
value.
Great value. Because the little jars are like, in my neighborhood, they're literally like $10 and we plow through them.
I know
plow
we
through them.
had it's same thing with us.
Yeah.
The little jar doesn't last long enough at all. And
Yeah.
this is like it's like a big dill pickle jar or something like
Amazing.
that. $20. So a few dabs of that inside the
Oh, that sounds
inside
like
the little
the
like
perfect
scallion
thing.
pancake quesadilla. I don't even know what you call it, but very, very good. Highly recommend stocking
Okay.
up on those the next time you're at Trader Joe's.
I'm going to do that because I think what you're touching on is important too. In the idea of like these little treats, like obviously you and I make more things from homemade than probably most people, and we're committed to that, and that's our life and whatever. But having these little pre-made treats is like, it's really a gift to yourself. Okay, I'm going to get those. I'm going to get them quick. The kids, I bet, are going to love them.
But anyway, that was, I don't know, just as I was talking through the process of making this delightful little scallion pancake quesadilla, we're going to talk today about recipes
Yes.
and the way we both, our day jobs is writing and editing and sort of having our heads trapped in this like world of recipe writing.
Yes.
And how it would be kind of a fun conversation to like draw on the work that we do writing recipes and the things that recipes can and can't do and the sort of conventions that push recipes to be the way that they are.
The forces behind them.
The forces
there are
behind
many.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like one of the things that inspired us to even start this podcast was this conversation about why can't a recipe fully capture the way that we really cook?
Yes.
So
Yes.
maybe that's where we're going here.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that too, just to sort of launch right in. Like, one thing that's kind of interesting about recipes is that they're definitely a contemporary idea. They've become what cooking is about. Like, oh, you have a recipe or you have a cookbook and you're following things. But up until like quite recently, people just went into the kitchen and they cooked. And they cooked with what they had because that's how you cook. You have some things and then you cook them and then you eat them. So I think the idea, the whole philosophy of like finding a recipe, following a recipe, shopping for a recipe, executing a recipe, having things left over from that recipe they're all kind of contemporary problems. And I think it's really interesting to think about just how it's not necessary. Obviously, I don't want to like talk us out of a job. We're both like committed to doing this, and I find there to be a lot of value in recipes, and especially in certain recipes, which we can talk about. I guess right off the bat, I was like, oh yeah, home cooking has become attached to recipes and cookbooks.
Yes. Yeah,
but I
yeah,
actually
yeah.
don't think home cooking historically or necessarily needs to be about recipes at all. And I know in my kitchen, it rarely is about recipes.
Yeah, mine too. I think when I'm just left to my own device, I know when I'm left to my own devices, I'm not cooking from recipes either. And this is something, I feel like every cookbook author I know is the same. It's so liberating to just go into the kitchen and pull from your knowledge and your ingredients and your cravings.
Yeah. And your intuition. And it's funny, probably all of my clients push back on the idea of formalizing recipes. It's like this virus or something that's come over sort of the cooking world. It seems to be a function of publishers, maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
It's strange that publishers are really like attaching themselves to that, because of course a cookbook is about not just recipes. There's a voice, there's a perspective, there's a culture, there's all sorts of other interesting aspects that someone's trying to portray in a cookbook. But it seems like the recipes have become the thing that everyone like hangs their hat on.
Yeah.
And I know like often my clients, I'm not even necessarily working for the publisher. It depends on the project. Like sometimes I'm an editor and I'm working for the publisher. And that publishing perspective is often about trying to tune recipes in like as tight as they can be tuned.
Yeah.
And I feel very capable of tuning a recipe. It's a skill. It's like a technical skill.
You're very good at it. You've done it
thank
for
you.
me many times.
But it's funny. It's very technical, and it's
Yeah.
not necessarily about making the recipe the best that it's going to be,
Like ticking all these boxes.
and trying to make it perfect and quantifiable.
And consistent within the
Yes.
the ecosystem of the whole book.
Yes, definitely. And consistent within the world of cookbooks in terms of, having a particular variety of recipes and having recipes read in a very particular way and the ingredients be listed in a very
Yeah.
particular way. And
Well, even like as an example, I take this the scallion pancake quesadilla thing that I just described. So if we were to turn that into a proper recipe, my head is spinning thinking about
yeah.
like how long it would look on the page,
for sure.
given like how it was something that I actually just threw together quite quickly as I was just like standing there in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I feel like you look at that recipe and I wouldn't be inspired to make that. If I
Right.
saw somebody, if I was standing next to somebody making that recipe, I'd be like, oh, I could totally do that and that looks really good. And probably anybody who has cooked before knows that you do not need to measure the cherry tomatoes nor the shredded cheese on top,
Right.
and that you'll know when the scallion pancake is done. But like when you do it in this cookbook format, there's this kind of extreme degree
Yes.
of exactitude about all
Yes.
these little elements.
Yes, very extreme. Extreme to the degree where it's off-putting. Like what you're
Yeah.
saying, like I'd be like, yeah, I'm never going to make that. That seems like
Yeah.
a real pain. Whereas if you can then read through it and say, oh, you're cooking some eggs and you're making a scallion pancake and you're adding some cheese and it sounds delicious, like the way you described. I'm like, oh yeah, definitely. That sounds actually pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
But the formalizing of it kind of kills some of it a little
It
bit.
kills the improvisational, flexible, sort of
Yeah.
riffy quality of home cooking.
Yeah. And it also makes it, I don't know, like if I'm being exact, like as an editor, I am tuned in. I'm going to check every grammatical thing, every conceptual thing. Do we have too many scallion pancakes in this book? Oh, this is the 12th egg recipe we have. Is this serving 2? Is it serving 4?
You said medium eggs in this recipe and large in this recipe.
Exactly.
They should be consistent.
It's great to be thinking through all those things, but I feel bad for people who are reading recipes sometimes, because I feel like if you're not like us and this is just a language that we speak, you can't necessarily see the forest through the trees. Like the crux of the recipe doesn't ride on this detail or that detail.
Yeah.
You and I can see that. But I think for people who are less experienced cooks, it's harder to see that. And what's really too bad is that then the cookbook sort of reinforces that, like the whole structure of a cookbook. So then I think people who might otherwise be learning from cooking a recipe are actually just learning to follow directions to a T. And it actually doesn't teach you anything, which I think is such a shame. I do think people who cook, there's a lot of experience that every time you cook, you can like get some experience, like,
Sure.
oh, that was maybe 1 egg more than I needed, or I cooked that egg a little too long, or gosh, I should have, used a little bit less oil in the pan with the scallion pancake because it was so greasy. Like these are the things that if you're following your own cooking, you can glean some information about it. But I think if you're following a recipe to a T, you're not necessarily evaluating. You don't really have the brain space to evaluate what's actually happening. You're just trying to follow
Sure.
step 6, and then follow step 7.
I have tried to do this in my cookbooks. I know a number of cookbook authors that try to do it. All of us want
Yes.
to transfer this thrill and ease and like just like the fun, easy nature of cooking when you just know what to do with ingredients, and
Or
you have
maybe
an
even don't know
intuitive-
what to do, but are just sort of in there playing.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
it's just
go on.
really it's hard to do in a cookbook.
Very, very hard to do. It's a really, I mean, you and I have talked about this at length for years, because it ends up making it feel more complicated, where you're like, oh, well,
Exactly.
this herb could really be any herb, or But then you have to know,
But then you're like, oh, actually, tarragon wouldn't be that good. Or
right. Or tarragon would be okay, but you'd have to use a quarter of the amount.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're like, okay, so let's not list tarragon because that's going to make it really complicated.
Yes, and then you sound like you're being kind of prescriptive about something where you didn't want to sound prescriptive. You wanted to.
That's right. And then the lines,
flexible.
Then we're talking about a recipe that just goes on and on and on.
Exactly.
Like in trying to add looseness, you add text. And then the more text you add, you're like, this scallion pancake recipe is suddenly running 3 pages long. Mm-hmm. So the idea of creating this one version that's the superlative version, that is totally tuned in, it's also kind of just a fallacy. There's a certain amount of like implied conforming that like recipes and cookbooks force you into.
Yeah. I do think the cookbook is this opportunity to persuade someone that maybe there's another way. I want you to try it this way because it's different.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's cookbooks sort of at their best. I was thinking about, like, for example, in the New York Times, I know people are always talking about, like, in the comment section, how when you make like, oh, I made this and it was shitty, but I actually changed this and I changed that and I changed this and I changed that. And people get all angry about it. And I see how you can't really judge that recipe then if you've made all these changes, of course. But I also kind of applaud people for like taking it and making it their own, which I think is also like really nice. It's nice to take an idea and run with it,
Yeah. And that's also something of this process. Like when you write a cookbook, you have to have all the recipes tested by somebody. Mm-hmm. And you always, or at least, every time I've done it, if I haven't used like a professional tester, if I've asked friends or family to do it, I'm like, you have to follow the recipe. Exactly. And you learn very quickly that like, that's not people's nature when they cook at home at all. No. It's like I remember the first time I asked some friends to test and they're like, oh, this is great. I used half and half instead of milk. And I did blah, blah, blah. I was like, that's helpful to know, but it's not.
But it's not really tested.
But then again, I'm like, oh, once this is like out, once this is out in the world, people are going to do what they do with it. And so in some ways it was kind of like liberating that like, I can get this to the point where I'm like, I can promise you that if you follow this recipe, hopefully you'll be pleased with the results. I think that people do just do that more often than they follow the recipe to a T.
I wish there were some stats. I don't think they exist, but I'd love to know sort of how much people follow things to a T and how much they wing it. Mm-hmm. Because testing is a really interesting subject too, because like, just so people understand, publisher's expectation, often like written into the contract, is that the recipes are going to be tested. And what that means is tested by an outside party. The idea is that it's like done in a different kitchen from yours with someone else reading your writing where you're not, involved. I think from a publisher's perspective, often the question is like, did the recipe work? Mm-hmm. And defining what work means is, you can go kind of deep into that. Like if it's a recipe that's supposed to be, in a 30-minute meal cookbook, but the recipe takes 45 minutes, like, yeah, that's something that
didn't work.
That didn't work. I don't know. Part of it's like holding it up to a recipe up to these standards that in a way it's kind of going to fail. Like,
well, it's just like passing a very specific test that isn't ultimately maybe all that useful to somebody in their own home kitchen.
When evaluating cookbooks for, contests or that kind of thing, the criteria are quite specific, and testing recipes is part of that evaluation. And it's interesting because like I feel like because it's a quantifiable fact, like did something work in these particular ways? It's something that everyone gets very attached to. But what I think is such a shame, like I've tested recipes for cookbooks in those realms, and the recipes haven't necessarily worked in that the way that they're written doesn't necessarily result in the result that the author's describing or promising. Yeah. My chicken took a little longer, or, oh, this didn't brown that much, but you still could get the result there. I hate to have a whole book hinge on the idea that someone's following your recipe to the T and that you're going to get this promised result, and that promised result is going to give you a particular
confidence
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it seems like there's a lot of other things about a cookbook and a recipe that can be expressed that aren't quantifiable,
Yeah.
that are really important. And in fact, often the most important thing about a cookbook, but they're not the things that everyone seems to be that focused on.
Well, the thing I always ask testers now is, would you make this again? And
That's
if you
a
made
great
it again,
question.
would you do anything differently? And that's always really insightful. And then like I love with people who like to cook, I'm like, what would you do differently if you
Yeah.
did it again? Because that's just like the jazz riff of cooking, and it is always fruitful for new ideas. And I think it positions the recipe as like this fluid thing rather than
Living
a super
thing.
fixed thing. Yeah. I always tell people when I'm working with them on writing recipes, it's like prioritize some kind of sensory cue of what the color should be, what the sort of texture should be.
Yes.
And then be like 5 to 10 minutes or
Exactly.
20 to 30 minutes.
Yes.
And so that like you really put the emphasis on like learning to be the judge yourself of hitting those targets.
Definitely. Because those are the recipes that actually do teach you, as opposed
Yeah,
to,
exactly.
you don't want the sort of GPS version of a recipe where you're like, if you just follow these directions, you'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can do that, I guess, and the recipe will be created to do that with you. But I guess I feel like the recipes where you can really get like actually the most interesting or even sort of best results for you are going to be the ones that give you that leeway to say like, broil it until it's crispy. Maybe that will take 2 minutes. Maybe that will take 10 minutes. But like it gives people that leeway. Whereas if you just said broil it for 2 minutes, then, in some people's broiler, that won't be.
I know a broiler is a very
Broiler's very
variable.
fickle. Yeah. Totally. So like, yeah, I love the idea that people could actually get some of that experience.
Well, this is where recipe videos and blogs, they're fully liberated from
Yes.
the constraints of a cookbook, where you can actually see, you can just visually take in through step-by-step photos or an unconstrained scroll where there can be as many little like subheads, and you can talk about all the variations and the targets to look for and how to shop for things and put as much information as you want into a blog post, or see something that like would sound complicated on the page.
Yes.
Like my quesadilla, but if you watch a TikTok of somebody making it, you'd be like, oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
Right.
I also think that home cooking has been very affected by social media
Yes.
in this way.
Yes. And in some ways, like what you're saying, I think for the better. But I think it does come a little bit back to sort of what the purpose of the cooking that you're doing is. I mean, I think for a lot of home cooks, it's to like get a meal on the table.
Yeah, it's dinner.
I still grapple with the idea of how cookbooks can fit into that, can fix that problem for people, because it's hard to have a cookbook go along with you. I mean, that's kind of what I think would be most helpful for home cooks in the kitchen who are a little unsure of things, is they need sort of a partner, But a cookbook's, the way that most cookbooks are written is they're more sort of leading, and you're just following them.
I know that there are a lot of cookbooks that try to address this particular issue of just learning how to kind of wing it in the kitchen. There's like that No Recipes cookbook in the New
Right.
York Times,
Yeah.
which I don't know if you saw this, but do you know Laura Shapiro? She's like a biographer. She wrote a really funny review of that book. Basically, her point was like, this is a cookbook with recipes in it.
Well, it totally is. I remember looking through that and being really excited, because I was like, oh, someone's doing No Recipes. Like I'm
Somebody's
so
figured
down.
it out.
Yeah, yeah, someone's figured it out, and maybe this is a model that we can all follow. And then I was like, oh no, yeah,
It's recipes.
It's recipes. It's maybe written in paragraph form.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. Like there's different ways to showcase that information, but you're still measuring out, like 2 teaspoons of something.
I think there's also a lot of different types of home cooks out there. I've been working on a project that's more about like kind of dump it types of recipes. And the appeal of those is that you don't have to think. You don't really have to engage the senses.
Yes.
You don't have to use your judgment. You can just like cut packages open,
Yes.
put things into a pan, and dinner is solved.
Yes, and it's gonna like make everyone happy.
Yeah, and everybody's going to enjoy it. Yeah.
And I really see the joy in that too for people. I mean, sometimes you're just really burnt out. I think in some ways everyone's kind of burnt out from recipes, but burnt out for different ways. And I think the idea of like being able to do something, not fuss about it, not measure things in this obsessive way, is appealing for everybody.
Well, and I keep thinking too, like, oh, if you only knew like how easy it was, like this is the sort of persuasive drive in the work that I do, where I'm like, sure, it's great to be able to cut open a package of like frozen potatoes and put the cans of soup and like all the stuff in there to make a casserole really easily. But I'm like, oh, you have like, I don't know, there's the broccoli in there, and I know you have eggs, and I know you've got a jug of milk. Like, it really isn't that hard to make this from scratch. Like, that's the thing that I'm always hoping that I can convince people. But
yeah,
I think like it's also, this is something that we really love to do, and not everybody else loves to do it. So
for sure,
and that's a fact. And I remember a writing coach that I had years ago in college, and I was like, I want to buy everybody in my family a book for Christmas because they don't really read, and I just want to give them a book that they're going to enjoy. And she's like, if they don't read, don't buy them books. Like, why are you doing this? I was like, oh, this is, I'm being kind of tyrannical here. It is, but I'm like, okay, somebody doesn't like to cook. They need to feed themselves, but like whatever the path of least resistance is the one that they should take.
Right. Well, that's such a good point. And I think the idea that like the cookbooks, they're really not one size fits all.
No.
Because, I mean, of course we all need to eat, but some people enjoy being in the kitchen. Some people have huge pantries. Some people hate being in the kitchen. Some people don't have access to a lot of foods. But there's different financial considerations in terms of like what you can buy. And some people would never dream of buying an ingredient that you're going to use a tiny spoonful of and the rest is going to go to waste.
Completely,
So I think it really depends on what you're coming to a recipe for. And, if you're having a dinner party and you really want to impress everybody, that's a different attitude than, have really picky children or, have one or another health concerns, or there's all these other issues. So I think
so many factors.
Yeah, there's just so many factors. It's tricky to say, like, do you really want to say salt to taste? Because a lot of people don't know how to salt things. It's not only personal, but it's difficult. I undersalt things all the time. It's something that I'm really trying not to do. But like, if you put in a measured amount of salt, also, that's not necessarily going to taste good to everybody or be healthy for everybody.
I remember I did a cooking class years ago with Melissa Clark. I wish I could remember exactly what she said, but essentially, like, there is a sort of objective salinity, and it's somewhere around like the body, like saliva's salinity.
Oh.
That like when you're deciding how much salt to put into a dish, that's kind of, it should be matched.
That's your baseline.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I can't remember what the percentage is. I could probably look that up. Maybe I will. If I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes.
Oh, yeah. I'd be interested. I mean, then, of course, calculating that ideal salinity in terms of
and then getting out your 8th teaspoon. And
Right. Or my favorite in the cookbook, editing the half tablespoon, where I'm always ugh, doesn't exist.
Salt is the thing that I feel like people who don't think that they are good cooks, like, if they learn to properly season their food, they're going to see a world of difference.
Oh, a huge world of difference.
I'm a big fan of putting the salt measurement in the recipe rather than season to taste.
I think the salt measurement is very helpful. But also, I think what's interesting is that like seasoning also just isn't just about salt.
Right.
So it's also about, like squeezing a lemon over the top, or what you serve it
chili flakes
with, or there's all sorts of other considerations that can like make or break a dish where you've made this dish. But if it's still not that great, there's a lot of variability in terms of what you can do and how to adjust it that's going to make it taste better.
So what's your first thing that you do when something is lackluster?
Salt. I mean, there's
yeah.
no question, because I am an under seasoner, and like to the degree where like everyone, it makes me crazy. Like my whole family will like salt something before they taste it, and I'm like, I hear you, because I know I under season, but I'm also like, are you sure? Are you sure?
Everything you've ever made for me has been so perfectly seasoned.
Oh,
I have a
thank you.
hard time believing that you had under seasoned.
That's very kind. I may have been making special efforts. That's the thing. Is like I feel like if I take a second and I taste it, I'm like, oh, I need to fix this. So salt is a good one. Like lemon juice is another big one that I use to like, or a little vinegar to sort of wake something up.
Vinegar is one of my favorites. It's
yeah.
so transformative, especially in like a soup. Just
Oh my
adding
gosh.
a tablespoon of
Yeah.
red wine vinegar, balsamic vinegar,
Yeah, white vinegar.
apple
Just
cider.
like-
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, it can really wake something up. And then often the salt then needs to get sort of maybe readjusted. And
Yeah.
that's all part of the fun of that.
Olive oil.
Oh,
I feel
gosh.
like it's sometimes something you think it's flavor, but it's actually texture.
Yes.
And adding a little bit of like finishing olive oil or like stirring in a little bit of olive oil at the end of a soup or some kind of creamy type of dish, that just does wonders for making the
Wonders.
flavors sing.
And having, the sort of lusciousness of something.
Yeah, it's the texture, but it sort of tastes like flavor.
I remember once on a project that you and I worked on where we made this blended soup. It was like a cauliflower soup or something. And we were all like, it's good. And it was like seasoned, and it was like, yeah, that's good. And then we added like a lot more olive oil. And then we we're like,
that's
good. Now this is amazing.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's a case where like having that then written into the recipe, you're going to add a quarter cup of olive oil to this soup, or, like something that I would never intuitively necessarily be doing. That really makes a recipe that you're going to go back and make again.
And like that to me is the real value of a good recipe. You're like,
Yes.
that's what it took. Oh, okay, I can apply this in 500 other
Yes.
things that I cook.
Yes.
And
What a lesson to learn.
Yeah, and this is like such a tool in my
Yes.
toolkit.
Yes. Yes. Maybe that's the cookbook we should write.
Yeah.
Like
The fixers.
the fixers, because the fixers really they can really change everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you making for dinner tonight?
Well, I made some broth yesterday.
Oh, chicken broth?
Newsflash, chicken broth, but this was just like with a random chicken carcass like a roast chicken carcass. So it was nothing special, the broth, but I just am going to make some soup tonight. So I had like some leftover white meat that was like, not that fascinating. So I think I'm going to do like barley, chicken, some celery, like keep it pretty, maybe some spinach, keep it pretty plain. If I had some herbs, maybe I'll go get some herbs. Yeah.
Do you garnish those types of soups?
I don't usually. I mean, maybe I should. Maybe that would jazz it up.
I'm a big fan of the full-fat yogurt that you either spike with some lemon zest or some microplaned garlic.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And that always just kind of like, I don't know, I feel like when you can kind of like make a bite of soup
Yes.
rather than just stick your spoon in
Customize
there.
it. Yes.
Yeah, it just
Yes.
kind of makes it, it's like
So
the
true.
frizzled onions or the breadcrumbs and things like that. It just turns a very homely soup into something that feels kind of
Definitely.
restaurant-y.
And it's such a good thing to do with the kids too, because I think my inclination with that kind of stuff is to like keep it simple, because they're always like picking around all the like bits. But yeah, it's good to then be like, well, you guys can pick around the bits and I'm going to add more bits.
Yep.
Yeah.
More bits.
Yeah. What are you going to make?
I just did a test of these a couple of days ago, but like fish and papillote, or like the parchment wrapped fish fillets. I'm going to do that again tonight. I made them
great.
with frozen like sockeye salmon, which I don't normally buy.
It's a little lean.
It is kind of lean, and I feel like I've always overcooked it the times that I've made that
me
before.
too. I hear you.
But I will say, in the parchment pouch,
Oh,
it cooked beautifully.
really?
It's because it basically steams in there.
Yeah.
So it's like it doesn't really like lose moisture. And I was doing this thing with because I'm playing around with like the vegetables on top, and I'm trying to like have it be a sort of protein and fiber combo in one pouch. And so I've been playing around with edamame with like other vegetables and sort of like seasoned with some soy sauce and balsamic and honey and stuff.
Great.
It is very good. But I just, in one of these, this last test, I just threw frozen edamame in there. And I assumed that in the hot oven, it would just like thaw really quickly. But normally you can do that, cook a fish in Pablo in like 10 minutes or something. And this took, because I think the fish was frozen, it took like almost 25 minutes to get everything.
Wait, the fish was frozen also?
No. Sorry.
Oh.
The edamame was frozen. I'm sorry.
Really?
Notice listening back on these episodes, I'm constantly misspeaking. And like, I appreciate
I don't think you are.
Okay, I am. I just know anybody who's like, Lucas is always misspeaking, I realize, and there's nothing I can do about it when we've already recorded the episode.
Yeah.
But so yeah, there's frozen edamame, which slowed down the cooking of the fish, but it never got overcooked. So
Really?
And these were just like nice, sort of good quality frozen sockeye salmon. Those I did thaw in the refrigerator, but like they could be in the oven for 25 minutes in this little parchment pouch.
Interesting. Frozen sockeye salmon is one of the. I feel like it's the wild. It's the only wild option I can usually find that's frozen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one I buy. But yeah, it's not that luscious. So that's good to know as a way to cook it, because I'm constantly overcooking it, and then everyone kind of bitches
I know
about
that it really is not that fun to eat. Yeah, and I feel like I've developed a number of recipes for fish in parchment, and I feel like it's still something that people don't cook all that often. Like, it really is not fussy. It's very, very easy to make, and it's very like mess free.
Yeah.
And it feels like showy enough to like make for company or something, but
yeah. Well, and I think you don't even need to use parchment. I mean, you could do it probably like in like tinfoil.
Oh yeah, you probably could.
Yeah. Like I feel like even sort of the name of it can throw people off.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. Fish in a pouch. It sounds so delicious, but you don't really want to like uncrimp your parchment and then be like, oh, it's not cooked enough or whatever. But the
testing
idea that
for doneness is a real challenge with.
Yeah. But I think the idea that there's actually a lot of leeway in there is kind of freeing.
I mean, maybe I'm just kind of in the early stages of figuring this out, but I've been very pleased. I would love to hear your thoughts. All right. Well, enjoy your soup.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good day for it.
We'll talk next week.
Sounds great. Okay, talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.